Sweet, it works. All right. So the reason why I'm doing the read aloud on here from now on is because um I realized a couple days ago that a lot more middle schoolers and high schoolers were enjoying the read alouds than elementary schoolers, which was weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, all elementary schoolers were enjoying it too, but I figured that maybe other people wanted to hear the read aloud, so I'm going to do the read aloud on here from now on. So for those of you that are just joining me, um, I've been doing a chapter a day read aloud of this book right here. It's called The Night Zookeeper, The Elephant of Tusk Temple. Now, the reason why I'm doing this read aloud is because I promised my kids this year, my third graders, that I would read this book to them. We saw this book in a series, well, we saw the character in a series of clips on Class Dojo, and I was like, I would get the book, and I got it for Christmas, and I said that, once everything stopped being so crazy with testing and things like that, that I would read this book to them. Well, situations went sideways, and I never got the chance to read it to him this year. So I started a couple days ago doing a chapter a day, and I'm on chapter 4 of this book right now. The other 3 chapters are up on my Instagram, my teachergram, Mr. Berkeley Noise Loco, and on YouTube at Mr. Berkeley. So I'm now reading chapter 4 of this book. So I'm going to put this chapter up once I'm done with everything, once I'm done reading it, so everybody who hasn't caught up with it can enjoy it. So, without further ado, chapter 4 of The Elephant of Tusk Temple. Chapter 4. The door to the spinning room slid open, and Will stepped out into a place he knew so well. He was on the path leading to the back garden of his own house. He was home. It was nighttime, but the downstairs lights were glowing, welcoming him back. He almost broke into a sprint for the steps. He felt a desperate urge to throw open the back door and fling himself into the arms of his mom and dad. His eyes lit up as he heard a familiar voice around the corner. "Grandma, I'm here," he spluttered as he dashed forward. Will rounded the corner and skidded to a halt. There were 2 young boys sitting on the grass in front of Grandma Rivers' shed. Under a string of fairy lights, Grandma Rivers herself was perched on the steps of her shed talking to the children. Strangely, she hadn't even looked up when Will had appeared. Will peered at the 2 boys. The smaller one was his younger brother, Charlie. Charlie smiled at something his grandma was saying, and Will noticed Charlie's front teeth were missing. Will shook his head in disbelief. "What?" he said. "It's not possible." Charlie had lost his baby front teeth ages ago, and now had his adult ones. Will looked at the other boy, and his stomach lurched with a mix of surprise and fright. The other boy sitting on the grass was him. He was staring at himself, but a couple of years younger. Will's legs felt a bit wobbly. "Hello," he said. His throat was so dry that it was barely a whisper. "Hello, Grandma?" he repeated. Grandma Rivers, Charlie, and his younger self ignored him. Will wondered why they hadn't noticed him. He was about to take a small step forward when he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. Will turned and nearly jumped out of his skin. He was face to face with a huge purple trunk. "Hello, Night Zookeeper," said Maji. "Maji!" Will cried in relief, wrapping his arms around the elephant's trunk. "I came to the temple like you said, but you weren't there," he garbled. "But now I seem to be home, and I'm not sure where or when I am, to be honest, anymore." The huge purple elephant chuckled. "Don't worry, my dear Will. This must be very strange for you. I expect you've got lots of questions." Will nodded and looked up at Maji's magnificent broad head. The infinity symbol on her forehead was glowing gently, and her wise, mischievous eyes twinkled in the fairy lights. Will had hundreds of questions for her, but he couldn't think which one to start with. Maji smiled. Let's start with where we are, he suggested, or rather, when. By the way, they can't hear us, Will, because we are behind the curtain of time. Look carefully, just ahead. Do you see it now? Will turned back toward the others and squinted at the air just a few inches from his nose. There was a faint shimmering in the night air, like a gossamer thin sheet of sparkling crystals hanging between him and the others. Instinctively, they reached out to touch it, but Maji gently slid the tip of her trunk around his wrist to stop him. She chuckled again. Sorry, my dear, but I must advise you not to touch it. You would give your younger self a terrible shock if he saw us. Will lowered his hand. I don't understand, Maji. Why am I here? This is the past, right? But the temple is under attack right now, and Sam and Rhea, they're in danger. Maji nodded. You are right, Will. But I brought you here to listen. Do you remember this moment? Will shook his head. I don't think so. Listen to what, Maji? Your grandma, she replied. Listen to what she's telling you. Will turned to listen to Grandma Rivers. The night zoo is full of amazing magical animals, she was explaining. There are bumbling bees, polar wolves, and flamingos who work in hospitals, penguins who love hot chocolate, and even tapirs that play tubas. Are there giraffes? Asked Charlie. Oh, I'm sure there are, she replied. But not just ordinary giraffes, of course. Special ones. What do you imagine is special about the giraffes, Will? Younger Will sat for a moment, then shrugged his shoulders. Don't know, he replied. I can't think of anything. Standing behind the curtain of time, Will almost laughed. It was so strange hearing himself talk, especially as his voice sounded higher. Now, I know that's not true, Will, his grandma was saying. You have an amazing imagination. You just need to put it to work. Younger Will thought again, then blew out his cheeks. The giraffes, they're tall, super tall, he suggested. Grandma Rivers nodded. That's a good start, she said. Remember, you can create anything in the night zoo. You just have to believe. Have another go. Younger Will shifted uncomfortably on his bottom. The giraffes are special because they're tall, because, I don't know, I can't do it. That's okay, Will, said his grandma. It's not easy sometimes, is it? Sometimes you just have to work at things. Remember, persistence is the key. They're spies, cried Charlie. Younger Will sighed and his head dropped. They're spying giraffes, and they live in the Whispering Wood, and their leader is called Naneka, and they're funny, clumsy one called Sam, blurted out Charlie enthusiastically. Wonderful, said Grandma Rivers. What an imaginative leap, Charlie. Behind the curtain of time, Will could hardly believe his own ears. Sam, the giraffes. But they're real, he exclaimed. Maji nodded and said, Yes, they are now. Now put your hand on my forehead, Will. It's time to visit another time. Will glanced back at his grandma, his brother, and his younger self. Younger Will looked glum, and it triggered a memory in Will now. He remembered this moment and how he had been a bit annoyed with Charlie for coming up with a great idea. But more than that, he remembered how he had been annoyed with himself for giving up. His fingers touched the infinity symbol. His fingers touched the infinity symbol on Maji's forehead, and Will was back in the spinning room, bathed in beautiful purple light. A few seconds later, the door opened again, and Will stepped out. Maji was already there, watching a different scene from beyond the curtain of time. Will stood next to her. Remember this? Asked Maji with a smile. This was just the other day, just before I came into the night zoo, Will answered. He remembered it clearly. He saw himself again, but this time by the zoo wall. He was standing, paintbrush in hand, in front of his purple painting of Maji. Will watched as Grandma Rivers talked to him and then pulled him into a powerful hug and whispered something in his ear. And do you remember what she said? Asked Maji. She told me I was ready. Finally ready. And I remember thinking, ready for what? Maji, what did my grandma mean? What am I ready for? Asked Will. Ready for what is coming next, Will, said Maji. He could sense the seriousness in her tone. Because you have an incredible power, Night Zookeeper, and the Night Zoo needs you. Whatever you can imagine comes to life in the world of night. Just like Charlie created Sam the Spying Giraffe, you created me. Will stared at Maji in astonishment. That's right. Look at your amazing original painting. You created me with your imagination. The Night Zoo is full of your creations. But as you know, we are under attack. The Lord of Noth has declared war on imagination and will not rest until we are nothing but dust. You've seen the damage his voids can do. The Night Zoo is all that's left of the world of night, and it is shrinking by the second. But you can save this place. You have the power to bring light back to the Night Zoo and stop the Lord of Noth. It all starts here, Will, in the temple. But you must face some trials and discover what it really means to be a Night Zookeeper. Before Will could respond, the infinity symbol on Maji's head glowed brightly, and the scene in front of them fast-forwarded in time. Night fell in seconds, and Will saw himself standing again in front of the glowing magical gate. Pardon me. So I don't know if anybody heard that, but I'm going to read it again. Night fell in seconds, and Will saw himself standing again in front of the glowing magical gates, about to enter the Night Zoo for the first time. Just remember, anything is possible in the Night Zoo, said Maji next to him. She wrapped her trunk around him and gave him a powerful hug. All you have to do is believe. Touch my forehead again, my dear. Where are we going now? Will asked, reaching up to touch her forehead. As his fingers made contact, she replied, It's your time to shine. Wait, said Will, realizing what she meant. But the symbol glowed, and Will was in the spinning room again. Seconds later, he tumbled out of the door and back into the temple. Will, cried Rhea, rushing forward. Where have you been? Are you traveling? Oh, paused again. Will felt slightly dizzy from all his time traveling. He tried to clear his head, but he couldn't think how to explain. Sam was grinning at him. You saw her, didn't you? He beamed. You saw Maji. Will nodded. What did she say? What did she say? Sam was bouncing up and down with excitement. Rhea swiftly moved out of range of his clattering hooves. Not much, really, replied Will. Rhea and Sam both gave him a quizzical look. Only that I have to face the Night Zookeeper trials and save the temple. And then I have to save the Night Zoo. Oh, and then the entire world. Will smiled weakly at his friend. Woohoo, said Rhea, grinning back at him. Now you're talking. Which way to the trials? Rhea rubbed her hands together enthusiastically. The sand timer doors spun again, and this time they turned a brilliant yellow color. When they stopped, a new door appeared with a large golden seal on it. Well, I guess that answers my question, Rhea said. Look, Will, it's the same symbol as the badge on your cap. The new door opened. Will took a deep breath. He had no idea what lay ahead, but he knew it was going to test them all. At that moment, they heard splintering, creaking wood, and a huge crash echoed through the room. "Uh-oh," said Sam, glancing back towards the entrance. Rhea looked at Will in alarm. No time to waste, thought Will grimly. The voids had broken through. It was time to face the trials and save the temple. And that's it. All right, so that's chapter 5. That's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is tomorrow. I will see you guys then. Have a good one.